क्लास रूम में फर्स्ट ईयर में लैब
சொல்லுங்க
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back, and I hope everyone had a satisfying meal. So, as we proceed to our next session, designed to broaden our horizons and challenge our thinking, I would like to request M. Shruti of 2nd MSc Microbiology
Hello.
to introduce our speaker, Dr. Simi J. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm delighted to provide an introduction to the esteemed resource person, Dr. Simi Jain, Associate Professor and Head of the Department of Food Science, MOP Vaishnav College, Chennai. She is a distinguished expert in the field of food technology and management. With over 22 years of experience, her expertise spans a wide range of area within this domain. Ma'am has a solid foundation in food science, having earned her master's and doctoral degree from J. Naren Vyas University, Jodhpur, Rajasthan. Ma'am has undergone a variety of internship programs in hospitals and Taj Group of hotels. Her area of expertise and experiences has allowed her to witness firsthand the challenges and opportunities in beverage and baking technology, product development, sensory science, food science and nutrition, food processing and preservation. She has published 24 research papers in reputed national and international journals, shedding light on emerging trends and innovative practices in food technology. She is also on the editorial board for many journals. Ma'am serves as a member of Board of Studies in PSGR Krishnamal College for Women, Coimbatore, Tiruvallur University, Vellore, SDNB Vaishnav College for Women, Chennai, and she is also a member in Board of Technical Education, Uttar Pradesh. Ma'am has attended and presented papers in number of national and international conferences and seminars, to name a few: child's mental health, sports nutrition, and challenges to the changing status of age, etc. We are fortunate to have her as a guest speaker today, and we are eagerly anticipate the insights she will share with us. Please, ma'am.
Dr. Simi Jain. ஒரே நிமிஷம் வா. அதுல போடணுமா?
No.
In teachers, we are fortunate enough to have loud voice. I don't know whether we need a mic for this because if I talk louder with a mic, it will become all the more. I will be only able to hear my voice. So on and off, I will be away from the mic so that it is easy to understand. By the time that we are preparing for the presentation to be here for all of us, I'll just talk a brief about what we will be talking about. I think 2 days of interaction with the experts that have come here to talk to you, to share their knowledge and expertise. I'm very sure that they would have brought in a lot of research from their own fields and shared with you some new, some novel technologies that will help in processing, that will help in keeping the food safe for a longer period. And there would be a lot of challenges when we talk about technologies as well. Yes, I believe we are PG students, a lot of us sitting at research scholars. And talking about technologies, especially to this generation, should be something I should have learned from you when they say what are the new technologies that are coming. Yes, but whenever there are new technologies, I believe there are also a lot of challenges that are associated with it. And when it comes to food, we have to be extra safe when it comes to, because it is associated with the safety and security of a whole lot of the nation or the people around them. And keeping this session light to finish off with your 2-day national seminar, I'm not giving you too much of a statistics. I'm not talking about too much of a research because we don't come from a research organization. We are more academicians in nature. And they will even talk about what food safety actually means to each and every one of us. And why today we are sitting here to talk or deliberate on food safety issues. What are the global issues? Um, what are the issues globally rather, which we should be aware of? Because without being aware of what is happening because of the unsafe food, it is really difficult for us to take a call on why there is a need for a food safety regime to be there. So I believe students from food microbiology and otherwise also would be in a state to understand that what exactly it means to be a safe food when we talk about a food which is wholesome, which is physically, microbiologically, and chemically safe and sound for consumption of humans. More so when we talk about the food safety standards of India, the FSSAI, when they define it, we talk about these associations. We talk about a food which gives you an assurance which is acceptable for human consumption. And beyond all these things, I believe what is important for us to understand today is that what FAO or WHO defines a food or a safe food to be like as access to a nutritionally adequate and safe food, which is a right of each and every individual. And keeping this in mind, I believe today's a bit of my presentation, wherever I am really talking about, let's talk about that it is our right that we have an access to safe food to all of us, every one of us sitting here and throughout the globe should have an access to a safe food every time when we have a consumption. And food security for that matter, when we talk about food safety and we do not talk about food security, it is rather an incomplete definition. Because when we talk about food safety, food security has to be taken care of. It rather takes care of food security because with food safety in place, you have a lot of food losses that will be minimized. You will have a lot of quantum food that will be produced. You will have a lot of agricultural waste that can be reduced. You will have a lot of nutrient rich products that will be available to your population in order to take care of the nutrient deficiencies of the population. And there comes the need of the security. In taking all these things into consideration, we say food safety and food security go hand in hand. Yes. Apart from this, talking about what a safe food, biologically and all these things being taken care. But there is a lot of concern when we talk about the foodborne illnesses and the magnitude of the foodborne illnesses that have happened over the years throughout the globe that have taken place. And we all understand a foodborne illness has a huge impact on the economies because um, trading across the countries, across the nations would be really difficult if you're not able to cater to a safe food in assurance with the food safety standards, national or global. So it is not only a loss to the economies, but also in terms of the productivity, because the human beings are not at a healthy state. And also, you will have to have a full your trade, trading up dedicated to take care of the healthcare of such people who are falling ill due to the consumption of the unsafe foods. These are just some. Can we move the slide? These are some alarming figures that we have here that we're talking about. That 1 in every 10 person who falls ill is falling because of eating contaminated food, and almost near to about 200 disorders or diseases are caused only and only because of eating such kind of contaminated foods. And the burden of such contamination, the illness or the malnutrition is more so taken by the most critical population, that is the children under 5. But obviously, I will also talk about those population who will be lactating, who is carrying babies, and also the elderly population. But majority of the burden of these, illnesses because of the contaminated food is borne by children who are under 5. And that is really a concern for us to understand that we have to take care, because again the vicious cycle will keep on going. They do not get enough safe food, they do not have immunity, they do not have the power to fight with disorders, they do not have enough food intake, and thereby the cycle continues. Yes. And an estimated of about, another to add on to the figures, we say an estimation of about 5 million people who died globally because of the consumption of such kinds of contaminated foods or which are infected with antimicrobial resistant microbes. So what should be done? These are figures which really take us aback and makes us think that there should be certain things, a food safety system in place. I don't say there's not in place. Globally also and at the national level also, we have systems in place. But apart from that also, there has to be a lot of other things that have to come in place to see that you're able to reduce the losses to the healthcare, to the nutrient capacities of your population that is going on. And the one best thing that we can do is what we are presently focusing on are fragmented, approaches to see that everyone gets a wholesome meal rather than a fragmented approach. The basic idea that can be done is a holistic One Health approach, where we'll see the connection between anyone and everyone who's contributing to food and who comes in contact with the food. It is not only the food handlers, it is not only the plant where the food gets processed, but also the plants, the animals, the environment in which the food is getting produced or processed. If you are able to bring all these things in line, probably we'll be able to bring in this holistic approach of One Health, and we'll be able to better deal with the food safety aspects of our country. And having said that, I believe we will also understand when all these things will fall in place, definitely a lot of sustainable development goals, when we talk about zero hunger, no poverty, and lot many other things, safe food, good health, good nutrition to their population, a lot of these sustainable development goals will automatically, be satisfied nationally. And we can please change it. Move on. I've already discussed on these things. There's something which right now when I have talked about the vicious cycle of malnutrition, and I believe everybody is aware of that. When we talk about a contaminated food, contamination by anything, be it the microbes, be it the chemical contaminants, definitely we have either infections, intoxications, and thereby you will have a lot of reactions that your body will give, as simple as acute reactions, vomiting and diarrhea, to severe implications on your body parts. It can be to your liver, to your kidneys, or as you know as high as the disorder or implication that we can talk about is cancer. So when we talk about such kinds of contaminated food or the hazards that come from the food, what are the body's physiological responses to such kinds of things? I believe we will all understand and would have learned that when we are under such kinds of stress, such infection, as simple as when we are in febrile conditions, definitely our tendency to take in the food, the regular amounts of food reduces, isn't it? So when we are into a malnourished state, in an infectious state, your capacity to take in the food reduces. Apart from that, you have inflammatory or reduced immune responses. You have increased metabolism, and thereby the needs of your nutrients increases. But what is happening is you're not able to give your body the required amounts of nutrients. And when you are doing so, you fall into another place which is termed as malnutrition. And as I said, who are the critically, those segments of the population? These are those under 5 children who basically will fall into this category of this vicious cycle. When they do not get enough food, they have all the exposures to the hazardous foods or hazardous chemicals, and then do not take it enough food, then they get malnourished, and this cycle keeps on continuing. So the idea today is not only, as I said, it is not only to talk about food safety, it is about an approach which will be holistic, which will take care of each and every element which can contribute to unsafe food, and thereby considering those aspects and giving a better holistic approach in order to take care of the health capacities of our population. We are talking about, I'll take you very briefly, very quickly to those segments wherein we are talking about chemical contaminants. I really have not touched in the microbial contaminants. which is also very huge and rather more important for us to discuss. Considering that I'm coming to a microbiology department and a research department, I have purposely reduced my presentation only to the chemical contaminants. But I understand throughout the chain, from farm to fork, there are enough number of opportunities not only for the chemical contaminants to come inside, but also microbial or the other physical hazards that. So here the slide says, though it is a very congested kind of a slide, but I believe we will understand with this, movement of the food from farm to fork, we will understand that a lot of pesticides, mycotoxins, the veterinary drugs that are given to the animals, the metals that become invariably a part during the travel, during the packaging, the process contaminants where we actually would have not considered that they become or they are a part of the food, but they invariably come and they fall into the category of non-intentionally added additives, so on and so forth. So I believe this congested slide itself is an idea for us to understand that a supply chain is really very crucial for us to see that each and every part of the supply chain is safe enough, has all the protocols to be followed to keep the food safe in terms of not transferring from the process, from the packaging, from the containers to the food which was actually safe during the previous cycles or the previous stages of the processing. The health impacts of such kinds of chemical contaminants will absolutely vary a lot depending on what are the kinds of chemicals that you have used, what are the dosage in which these chemicals have been added, and but obviously the most important thing, what or who are your target audience. More so when you are in a vicious cycle, when you are malnourished, when you are under the age of 5, when you are pregnant or lactating, or otherwise an aged population who has a reduced immunity, we are more prone to such kinds of infections or intoxications because of the consumption of the chemical contaminants. The impact can be, as we said, depending on the dosage that we are taking, the impact can be acute to chronic. And yes, certain times when we say these chemical contaminants not only show you the direct impact then and there, sometimes it does happen because these microbes, these chemical components can be, lethal at a single dosage itself. Yes, there are some, chemicals which can be at a single dose cause you a chronic disease also. But at times, and more so, it is the levels at which these chemicals are present are not that lethal. They are in, as far as it is not intentionally added, they are in the limits which your body can take in. So when they accumulate over a period of time during the process of your farm to fork, it is during those times when these increases in number or when the frequency of the consumptions of these chemicals increases. Like say suppose when we are talking about an infant formula and the infant is absolutely dependent on that formula alone for a repeated period of time, and if that infant formula is contaminated with any kind of a chemical, that is what the second category is, right? That is what the second part that we are talking about is that when the target audience or the target consumer is really sensitive to that kind of a particular product, because you're exposing your target over and over again to those chemicals and thereby saying. And we need to understand where they become a part and what can be the implications of their presence in our food or our body, so that we are able to give a better food safety assurance to your consumers. Talking about the residues, I think residues will come from both plants and animals when we give the various kinds of pesticides, the pesticides, the herbicides that are being sprayed on the plants even during the storages when they are being put in, when you increase the productivity of the, you want to increase the productivity of the plant, or otherwise if you just want to increase the nutrient profile, you would like to have a better feel of the product for numerous reasons that you are using pesticides or herbicides for your produce. Apart from it, for the animal foods that we consume, also including, I have put up here, when we are talking about as good as bees also, these fishes, wherein the culture of, when you are, culturing them, when you are growing them, there might be a lot of places wherein these veterinary drugs become a part of their feed, because you want to make them free from any disorder, the present disorders or any future disorders, and thereby when their food or their feed is contaminated with such kinds of, or is loaded with these veterinary drugs, but obvious these will be translated back into that. We are now talking about the environmental contaminants, of which I have taken only two important things here, the heavy metals and the mycotoxins. For us to understand mycotoxins, I believe everybody would understand sitting here. And I will only add one line here, that we understand that even if the mold might not be visible, even if the mold has been removed, the mycotoxin that has been produced by the molds might still survive, might still be present in your food, and thereby the implications of the presence of such toxins would be really very fatal to the life of the human beings. So any contaminations, any environmental concerns because of the presence of these mycotoxins and heavy metals, again, as I said, throughout the supply chain, from the place where you start to grow your products to the storage to the transportation, these metals, even your packaging, they get transferred into your food substances. Yes. The next one, the chemical additive that we are talking about is the non-intentionally added substances. And some of the non-intentionally added substances basically are all those food contact material surfaces or the articles where you are processing your food. Yes, your cutting, chopping, processing, or the pipes or the processing plants, wherever your food is coming in contact with, they tend to transfer the metals, they tend to transfer these kinds of substances which should not become a part of your food by any chance. Some of these examples that have been listed here are the mineral oils. The mineral oils, the bisphenols, the phthalates, and the residues from your packaging, which are transferred because of the heat that has been given to a packaging material, the ink, the adhesives that are being utilized in your packaging material. I understand it might not be visible, but I just want you to understand where it becomes a part. When we say we have unintentionally it has become a part of your food, these substances, when I say mineral oil, they generally are used as a coating which is prohibited to be used until and unless it is in assurance with the food safety laws of the nation. It can be utilized, but at certain times it is being given as a coating to the food substances and thereby it becomes filtered. Other ways by which it becomes unintentionally added to your food is by the ways of the adhesives. The additives that are being added to your, to your packaging material. The printer ink that is being utilized. These all contain the mineral oil. The packaging material will contain mineral oils, and by the means of all these substances, they tend to be transferred to your food during the full complex supply chain your food passes through. Two other examples of unintentionally added substances are the bisphenols. I would just like to add a bit here of the bisphenol, that both bisphenol and the phthalates are carcinogen in nature. And we do not add it intentionally. They become a part of our food or of our food processing chain unintentionally or by the means of processing that, as I say, if I'm talking about the bisphenols, basically they are considered, you cannot use them under the regulations given by your FSSAI. But all your packaging materials, all your bottles that are being used, especially your feed bottles that are being utilized, they all contain or they are made up of the bisphenol. And it has been found by researchers that it is carcinogenic. The same goes for the phthalates also, when we understand that the presence of phthalates is not naturally in your food. So where they become a part of your food or how they are cancerogen in nature. They attack or substances like when we talk about, packaging materials, the packaging resins that are present there or the food packaging processes that leads to these chemicals becoming a part of our food substances. Most of these have been found to be toxicant and they are found to be endocrine disruptive agent. They attack the male reproductive system and thereby they act like similar to your endocrine organs or secreting substances, and thereby they act upon your reproductive systems and they can be carcinogenic in nature as well. Taking to yet another type of a chemical contaminant that can be present are the process contaminants. And here are some of the process contaminants that have been listed here are the acrylamide. I believe you would have gone, the fat that has been heated undergoes a lot of chemical reactions and thereby this substance or this chemical is formed. 3-MCPD is another substance which is basically produced, which is actually, when we say it is not found, but it is one of the most common chemical compound of a magnitude which will lead to a chemical contamination to a large extent. It's carcinogen in nature. And can anybody guess where it is found in the largest of the amounts? When I'm talking about 3-MCPD. Most of your packaged foods, they are fried in what kind of an oil? Yes. Come on. Yes, yes. Palm oil. Right? It's cheap. Because a manufacturer would definitely look at what? Something which will be cheap, which will give you the frying capabilities. At the same time, it is able to make up a lot of profit. And this 3-MCPD which I'm talking about, which is the most common, chemical food contaminant, which is carcinogen in nature, it is predominantly found in the refined palm oil in large quantities. It is also found in other oils as well. But to be termed as a presence in large amounts, yes, palm oil is one culprit, wherein you'll find it in larger amounts, larger than the required amounts, which can be dangerous for us to be consumed. Adulterants is the last segment of the chemical adulterant, chemicals that can be present. Though I've added a couple of slides, I would definitely not like to read all those things, why adulteration has been done, for all the benefits, for all those which you would like to fake in terms of the color, flavor, texture of the food. A lot of chemical adulterants, chemical substances are added just to increase the profit margin of the manufacturers of the producers. Yes. So, yes, to understand what are the basic foods which are adulterated, the largest segment that is adulterated is the dairy food. And all of us are large consumers of it. By and large, this is one food that food group which every one of us consumes on a daily basis. This is one such food group which is, adulterated on a larger scale, apart from the seafoods, the herbs and spices, alcohols, oils, and so on and so forth. So finishing with, all these adulterants, all these chemical contaminants, and I will again skip all those things, for 3 slides, because we have spoken on the adulterants, we have talked about, and as I said, microbes, though I've put up 2 slides here, but I'm not talking about the microbes here. Omnipresent can be a word that we can talk about the presence of the microorganism in spite of, sterilizing a surface or a food processing equipment or something. Microbes will definitely tend to grow after a period of time depending on the intensity of the sterility that has been done. And thereby there is no for sure method that a food product will not get contaminated or will not have its own dosage in its own, amount of the microorganisms that are present. So I move on from the microorganisms to what is more important, and again coming to the basic idea of what we are talking about today here is the global scenario. What is the global food scenario that we are talking about here? As I said, and as has been stated by the FAO, that access to a safe or a nutritionally safe food to everyone everywhere is what is our fundamental right. And considering this, all my presentation now, the coming presentation will be covered. When I say the globe is moving, we are becoming global village. Your food is moving. The supply chain is drastically becoming elaborate, extended, and more complex. There are a lot many layers in the supply chain, and thereby there are a lot many ways by which these contaminants get added to your food substances. If we understand this particular thing alone, that how the food is moving, the longer, the complex, the extended supply chain, this is good enough for us to understand that we have added a number of ways by which your food gets contaminated or become unsafe for consumption. Yes. Next slide, please. Okay, I'll talk a bit about this slide because this is what talks about the drivers of change and its implication on the food safety. What has brought about, what has changed over a period of time? I'll talk about a slide which talks about, the developing countries and the developed countries. We will talk about what are the stages of, the change that has been brought about. What was the previous stage, what we were in of food safety, and what we are today. And before coming there, we'll just talk a brief about what are the drivers and what are the changes because of these drivers that are taking place. So, when we talk about these drivers, we say interest and demands for food safety. we have become more aware. We have become more, we have an interest towards getting a food which is safe, because it is not only that I should get a food for what I have paid, but um, I should also get a food which is safe enough for consumption. And for all these things, the implications lies on the FBOs, the food business operators, who should not only provide you, it is not only his responsibility to give you safe food, but also to provide you with all those technical, educational, or scientific parameters, or education that needs to be given to the consumers, so that the food safety is secured at all the times, not only from a food business operator's mindset, but also from a mindset of the consumers. So when we talk about these increased interest or demands by the consumers, we see more protected consumers, more informed or protected consumers. We have reduced risk from unsafe food because of the more education, the technical advances that the food business operators would be involved in or be translated to the food processing segments, and there'll be a lot of trust that will develop in the food safety systems, national or otherwise. The second driver of change would be the global food safety threats. There have been a lot of cases of, as I discussed, the number of disorders because of the infections, the number of deaths that are occurring. There have been a lot of cases of infections, intoxications, and that is the reason why it has brought us into a state of where the consequences have led to a multinational food safety emergencies. The way you deal with such kinds of emergencies is absolutely different, as I will say in my next slide. When we say initially we were just in a state of tackling a food emergency because it was an unsafe food. Today you have come into a transitional state. You are no more in the very immature state of unsafe food. You are in a transition state wherein your food has moved a lot. And when the food moves across the borders, it takes along with it a lot of challenges. It takes along with it a lot of bacterial loads, a lot of parameters which we would have not assumed when it was grown, consumed, produced, manufactured within a very small locality or a local production was being done. So the scenarios have changed when we talk about these global safety threats. Global challenges and their impacts on the food safety. What are the global challenges? The environmental changes that are happening. Yes. We talk about the environmental changes also in the challenges also here. We talk about the global warming, the increased sea levels that are taking place, the temperatures that are rising. Somewhere or the other place, all these environmental challenges will reflect a change in the safety of the food that has been grown and has been produced by the manufacturers or at the farms or the fields. Yes. Society, one of the most important factor, which is the driver to a change to our food safety parameters. The consumers' expectations, the consumers' preferences today have changed. We no longer look for what is grown locally or regionally. We have an access to a lot of media. We have an access, or rather, even with globalization, we have a lot of food that is coming into our nations, and thereby we are not only aware of what is existing in the other countries, but we really want it to become a part of our food. We have diversified our food patterns. We want variations in our food, international cuisine coming onto our tables, and thereby all these preferences have all these changes in the buying behaviors of the consumers have led to an implication to the food safety systems of the nation or the international organizations to look into the factors that will contribute to an unsafe food when the food moves across the borders. And thereby, the challenge here is when the food is moving a lot, there's a lot of movement happening. What should be done in order to see that the food is safe at all the times? Yes. Apart from this, when we are talking about the new business models, I believe everybody is aware of the e-commerce. You're sitting at home and you get your food being delivered. Your partners, though we consider that they would be safe in terms of the processing of the food, not to point out, but how do we check the safety, the hygiene, or the sanitary practices of the food handlers who are delivering, the partners who are an intermediate between those who are producing the food for you, manufacturing the food for you, and who are bringing it at your table. A lot of miscommunication takes place via these social media. And this is yet another challenge for us to, or for the food safety, National Food Safety Organization, to see how these risks because of the miscommunication can be taken care of. These are some of the very basic of the drivers of change and how they would have implemented or what will be the implications of such changes onto the food safety systems of the nation or internationally. Yes, we can please change it. This is just again, as what I've said, I've already talked upon all these things. Why we are talking about all these new challenges is because no longer we are eating, we are consuming the food which is locally. It's globalization, it is more of urbanization, difficult to cater to the needs of the urban population rather than a scattered, it was a very limited population. Now it is scattered with varied preferences and requirements. So urbanization, changing consumer habits of eating, increased number of people who will eat out, the buying behaviors, the preferences, the likes and dislikes, all these things have really complicated and brought in a lot of changes in the food supply chain. And this is where that I was saying that longer the supply chain, because now you want a food which is grown somewhere in the other country, you have lengthened the supply chain, and thereby what should be done during the supply chain in order to keep the food safe. Yes. Apart from this, apart from the globalization, urbanization, my eating habits, my likes and dislikes, about everything about the consumers, we have talked about climate change. We have talked about also about the insecticides, the pesticides, or the antimicrobial agents that are being added into the food to keep the food safe. Yes. Isn't it a very common phenomena that after a point of time a microbe becomes resistant to a specific antimicrobe, and thereby it no longer will be able to control the growth of those organisms into a food? And this is what is actually happening with the growth of the novel foods, novel ingredients, new technologies that are coming in, or the extended use of antimicrobial agent over and over again. Your foods have become resistant, or those microbes rather have become resistant to those antimicrobes. And this is one big challenge for you to deal with, that how these antimicrobial resistance can be improved. Rather, I'm saying in the negative sense, how it can be reduced so that your food is safe from those microbial contamination. Yes, you can just move a couple of slides when we talk about the food safety life cycle, which was given by the FAO, and I was just talking to you about that only. When we say initially, when we were consuming foods which were locally grown, we were in a state which is termed as the traditional stage of food safety. And what was that? The production practices were good enough that they were able to control the foodborne illnesses then and there, because it is not very widespread. It's not an extended supply chain. Yes. And the primary cause of the foodborne illnesses was basically because of poor hygiene or the sanitary practices at the plants. And they were controlling those practices, improving on those things would definitely take care of a lot of illnesses. But now, when we have moved with modernization, with a lot of changes that have taken place, we have now moved to the second stage of our development, and that is what is your transitional stage. Almost all of us, even the developing countries, are into this stage only, because a large segment of these developing countries have all moved to or have all become global villages. We have all access to the variety of foods and the processing technologies, more or less, depending on the kind of economy that we fall in. Yes, this transition stage, as we said, as the food modernizes, the system modernizes, we fall into this system. And this will do what? It will broaden your horizons when it comes to food safety hazards. Your hazards were lesser when you were locally growing and eating your foods. The safety hazards increased when it is a global food production and consumption, and movement of the food is globally. More foodborne hazards are caused by changes in the production and consumption practices, especially when it comes to fresh foods, because there is no processing is being done to those fresh foods, and thereby there are more chances that you get contaminated or you get an unsafe food which is a fresh food and is not processed. And also, when there's an increase in the imports, you can understand the opening of potentially new foodborne hazards across the borders, and thereby you always will have to face a new challenge. Why we were not able to control the coronavirus off the track, if we talk about. Yes, because there was a lot of movement of people and food across the borders, and thereby to control that hazard, to keep it segmented at a specific place was really very difficult. This is because there's a lot of movement that is happening because of globalization. As I said, you fall in any of the categories of your economies, be it the developing countries or the underdeveloped countries. The challenges would be different, but definitely we'll have to have some kind of challenges regarding the food safety. When it is the Asian continent or in the South Asian continents, we are still developing in terms of getting a safe food each and every segment of the population, isn't it? And thereby, we are into this category wherein we do not have good quality data to take care of a hazard that is arising, to have a very prompt or a quick action being taken whenever there is a chemical or a microbial hazard that has popped up into the country. Because of the lack of such, this is one challenge to an underdeveloped or a developing nation. Institutional challenges that we have or we are facing is the fragmented food value chains. As we said, we are looking into portions rather than a whole one system as one. We are facing with these fragmented value systems, food value chains, and policies which are not integrated. And that is the reason why, if now we understand, even our FSSAI have become one umbrella alone. Initially, when we are talking about safe food or food standards, each and every type of a food had a different standard and a different head to which you had to approach to get the norms or the regulations for that particular segment of looking into one food, one safe food to everyone. Even this FSSAI has turned completely into one umbrella saying the FSSA Act 2006. That's the only way by which you can tackle, you can have data in place so that you're able to take care of any kinds of emergencies that comes in because you are you are ready, you are in a ready state to take care of those kinds of emergencies. Yes. Now, what can be done in terms of, though I have termed it as opportunities, they're not actually opportunities because I could not get a better terminology for it. Let me put it into why we are talking about what can be done best in terms of food safety. These were some challenges globally that we have spoken about. So, what is the need here is harmonizing the global regulation. As we said, bringing it all under one umbrella. That will help us to have a data driven, that will help us to have a consumer oriented, that will help us to have, fact driven consequences, fact driven solutions to the problems that are coming to us. The more we have harmonized global regulations, it will help us in the applications of the technologies, as well as it will encourage the food industries to invest in a lot of tools which will take care of the food safety, the availability, and the quality of food. And for this, it is not only harmonizing the global regulation, but also to bring together a collaborative effort globally, locally, regionally, across all the sectors of the food process, wherever it is grown, till it reaches your consumers. As we all understand, it will have its implications on the economy, and thereby we need to have one food system which will take care of all such food safety disorders. Another challenge for the policymakers, rather when we're talking about food safety regulations, the challenge for the policymakers should be to promote sustainable agriculture, how they can do it, how they have been doing it, and how better they can do it for the coming in the coming generations, looking into the challenges that the country or the globe is facing. So promoting sustainable agriculture and the food system, fostering collaborations with public health, private sectors, and everyone who is dealing with when we talk about the stakeholders. Countries should also comply when we're talking about international standards. So they should also comply with the international standards, the Codex Alimentarius, and investment, most importantly, in educating the consumers, which will go a long way to see that the food that they're consuming is good, is safe, is nutritious, and any kind of a miscommunication from the social media will be handled very efficiently when you have educated consumers. And that is the reason why also this aspect has been taken up by the FSSA also, that apart from having regulations in place, apart from having a lot of ordinances, a lot of rules that have been framed for a safe and healthy food, they are doing a lot in terms of controlling the controlling food adulteration, educating or creating awareness among the stakeholders or the students sector, because these are the people who will impart knowledge further to the community at a larger level. So this is what can be done at a global or a national level to create awareness, educating your consumers about food safety. And as we said, this is one holistic approach. Until and unless being followed, probably nothing will fall in line. Some of the global initiatives, I believe you would have all heard of the Global Food Safety Initiative, the GFSI, which is a voluntary body, a non-profit organization, which helps in giving you standards in improving the food safety, moving of your food across the borders, having a food which will be safe with improved efficiencies and will help in harmonization of the food safety standards. Codex Alimentarius, I believe, requires to this audience, I believe, requires no further discussion what Codex Alimentarius is all about. With a wide range of foods and the standards that are being covered, and a lot of changes every time when we talk about, any kind of mishappening that is because of the adulteration or the additives, or research studies saying that a specific additive has shown to be carcinogen, and there were a lot of changes that are taking place in the regulations just to see that the food is always safe for consumption. HACCPs and GMPs, again, as we all understand, just to see that your food by any chance does not become unsafe. Potentially hazardous substances are being removed during the processing, during the manufacturing processes, so that your food is all good for consumption. Here I'll talk about the role of WHO along with the collaboration of the FAO and many other international organizations. They are trying to ensure food safety all along the food chain from production to consumption. And the one initiative that they have taken right now, that is the vision of WHO Global Strategy for Food Safety 2230, is to ensure that all of us, everyone, everywhere consumes safe and healthy food, so as to reduce, because ultimately the burden of a malnourished, the burden of an infected, the burden of an unhealthy person again comes or goes to the government. And thereby everyone gets a safe and nutritious food at all the times. And to do this, in order to take care of all these things, they have 5 interlinked and beautifully strategic, priorities have been taken care of, or they are focusing on, to see that they are able to build something which is termed as forward looking, which is evidence based, which is people centered, which is cost effective methods of food safety systems that will be in place to ensure the food safety for everyone. This is just one figure. Again, as I understand, since it has been taken from the WHO side, I would not enlarge it beyond this. These are all the strategic priorities that are being talked about. If I read to you, I believe you will understand that why they have been termed as strategic priorities and what they are going to give us. Yes. So these are national foods control systems. Challenges from the global changes. I've talked about what global changes of the food movements that have happened. Consumer behaviors have changed. E-commerce have come in. So all these global changes that have come in has brought in a lot of challenges. So challenges from the global changes and transformation in the food systems. The next priority is the use of information, the use of evidence and risk assessment, which was lacking initially. Probably that is the reason why they are saying that we look forward for a data-driven, forward-looking system, which will give you a cost-effective, which will give you a friendly food safety system, which not only the FPOs but even a common consumer will be able to look forward to see whether his food is safe or not. Having all these priorities in place, it will help you to do what? It takes you to outputs such as safe food risk, which will be managed. It will be consumers who are health promoted, health supported, and health protected. When there are consumers who are healthy, by all the means, it leads to decreased mortality and mortality. And this is what your lot many goals, your sustainable development goals talk about. No poverty, zero hunger, the decks that we're talking about, safe drinking water that we're talking about. So once these priorities are all in place, the output that it will give us is more satisfied consumers, more healthy consumers, and thereby less of burden to the government, more of decreased there'll be decreased morbidities or mortalities, and thereby a lot of national or the sustainable development will be satisfied. What is the challenge to India? being an underdeveloped or rather a developing economy. I'm sorry, we are not underdeveloped, but yes, a developing economy. Our challenges are sort of same only, but I have just tried to bring in three important challenges here, which I believe all of us would be able to relate to. These challenges are, you can please change two slides. These challenges are lack of information and clarity. Probably the way these regulations, these standards are being written into the sheets, they are difficult for a common man to understand. Even it is difficult for an FBO, food business operator who would start to, who would wish to start his business would be difficult to understand. So, lack of information and clarity, and thereby these FPOs often struggle to navigate these regulations and standards because there's not much of information whether to do it or not to do it, whether I fall in this category or I do not fall into this. So, what is not done? So, what can be done is these regulations can be written in a language which is easy to understand, simplified regulations, and providing clear guidelines not only to the FPOs but also to the consumers to understand what a safe food or an establishment is actually looking forward for. Limited awareness, definitely in an underdeveloped or a developing economy, this is one major challenge that we are facing. We have limited awareness of what a safe food or why a safe food turns unsafe. Yes, consumers, handlers, officials, basically a lot of us are lacking the awareness and understanding of food safety practices and regulations. More so, as simple as practicing these regulations at home, hygiene practices at home, how frequently we should wash hands, when I should wash hands, why I should wash hands, isn't it? So I become one major, I'm a person who will be directly coming in contact to the food. And if I do not understand the importance that I'm transferring these organisms or making a safe, otherwise safe food and unsafe food, the story remains still the same. In spite of having all the rules and regulations, all the standards in place, your food still remains unsafe. Why I should not take a food from a roadside? Or what can be done to these roadside vendors? This is another, opportunity for the Indian government to take in. How the street vendors can be promoted, how they can be made aware of to follow the regulations or the standards. Yes. And the last challenge in terms of ours, again, is the same thing when we say the infrastructure and supply chain regulations. Because we do not have the technology, we do not have enough finances to, to, to buy those technologies, to understand those technologies. The expertise are not there. We do not have sufficient or, the supply chain, the controls that are very essential for a food to maintain its integrity during those supply chains. We do not have it. If you go through the MOFPI website, you will understand what is the present status of the supply chains that are there or the cold chain storages are there, and what is the reckoning, how much we actually need and what we are giving to the country. That makes us altogether understand that where we stand in terms of our infrastructure. And no doubt, when this infrastructure is incomplete, definitely the longer the supply chain, your food gets contaminated, becomes unsafe for consumption. Yes. So where are the opportunities lying? Where all we can grow, where all we can improve in terms of Indian context? A lot of training and education is required. Awareness is required. And definitely FSSI has taken a step towards this as well. I believe you all would have gone to the website and they do talk about a lot of training programs, a lot of safety practices. They have a lot of modules, books that have been printed for these for the easy reading, for the translation of those people in different language for them to understand what it requires for a food to be safe or what is an unsafe food. So where are the opportunities so that we are able to translate more safer food to our country? Training and employment should be given. Street vendors should be given this education as to how they can improve their safety standards in order to provide, because we still are consuming a lot of, we do love to eat on the streets for a lot of reasons. Yes, and these are bound to be one of the most important places which might harbor a lot of microorganisms or otherwise other contaminants as well. So I believe the national standards should definitely look into, this is one major segment where they should look into as to how they can improve the street food qualities, what can be done to improve the quality of foods. Data collection, as I said, that was a challenge for the underdeveloped or the developing countries, that we do not have data in place, because until and unless we have the figures in hand, we do not have a very quick, action that can be taken. So there should be something that we are able to collect good scientific data of the evidence of the incidences that would have happened, or the reasons, what were the causative agents, and what was done in order to prevent all those things. Probably would help in taking care of many such cases that will happen in the future. Yes, accreditations and guidelines, awareness campaigns by the FSSAIs are another initiative. Apart from it, I'll talk about two more important things here by the FSSAI. And please change the slide. The State Food Safety Index. This is something which is, a kind of competition. When there's a competition, we definitely try to prove ourselves at the best. So through the FSSAI, this is one initiative that has been taken to improve the performance and work of the state food safety authorities to establish a proper food safety ecosystem in their jurisdiction. What is that all about? Basically, it is a dynamic, quantitative and qualitative benchmarking model that provides an objective framework for evaluating the food safety across how safe, how well they have done in terms of awareness programs, how well they have been able to secure the data, how well they were efficient enough to take care of any kind of a food hazard that have been that have happened. So considering all these things, there's something, as we said, is a food safety state food safety index. And the next slide is what will give you the various states that have fallen at different places in this index of 2022. Yes, index developed by the FSSAI, the scores by the larger states, by the smaller states in terms of the awareness. If you can see the pie diagram, we'll talk about the awareness programs, the consumer empowerment, how far they have been able to take care of that. Training and capacity building will be given 10 marks. Human resources, institutional data, managing or having a data in place will be given 20 marks. Compliance to the food safety standards in the state by the FPOs 30%, and food safety infrastructure, surveillance, the kind of accreditation that has been given to the labs, number of labs being promoted as accredited labs be given at 20%. And based on this percentage weightage of the parameters, 2022 index has been given to various states, and we can see where all we are falling. And a lot needs to be done when we talk about the index being as low as, below 25 is not a very great index to talk about. That means we are not being able to take care of a large majority of those food safety standards which is required for you to be assured that your food is safe for your consumers. I finished my slide. The last two slides which says that safe food is everyone's responsibility. We are all the stakeholders. The responsibility does not always lie on the government. They're definitely there to take care of the policies, making the standards, regulations. But to see that I am consuming, I'm a responsible citizen, I should be accessible to a safe food always. I should have the correct knowledge. I should be aware of the food safety standards. This is what is meant by everyone's responsibility. So everyone plays a key role in keeping the food safe. And when we say, the government, the industries, producers, academia, and more importantly, this role being played by the consumers. Yes, a lot has been done at the international level when we talk about the codex, when we talk about the HACCP, when we talk about the GFSI, when we talk about the FSSAI at the national level. Yes, what we were a decade or 2 decades back in terms of our national policies or the national food safety standards, and where we stand today, how much we are able to control. There's a whole lot of a difference in where we are placed today. But that does not mean that we have attained what we are supposed to. It's a long way to go. We are still on the way, and a lot has to be attained in that particular way to go. Yes, and as I say, whatever has been talked about comes here as the messages that we can understand that food safety and food security cannot be separated out. They cannot think of any food security, accessibility to safe food, accessibility to nutritious food without talking about a safe food in place. Yes, definitely it has impact on the health, it has impact on the economies, the trade, everything it has an impact on. It protects the consumers. The ultimate goal of any food safety system to be that you have safe consumers. You are liable. The government has the responsibility to have a healthy citizen, a healthy group of citizens for the growth of the nation. And that is the reason why we say that everyone is a risk manager. It is everyone's responsibility, and it is everyone's responsibility to see that I will be able to manage, or how far this will be my contribution to manage the risk. I finished my presentation. I know no research has come in here. We do not come from research institutes. We are more academicians. So it is more a data that has been taken from the various authentic, but obvious, websites, which talks about where we are, where we were, and where we ought to look forward in the coming years in providing safe food to our consumers. A very long way to go.
Participants, do you have any queries?
It is more of a better way to understand this much. A couple of us have been studying probable not. It's okay. But whoever has an advantage. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for sharing your knowledge and valuable insights on the topic food safety, which is the most fundamental and pressing challenge of the time. Thank you very much, ma'am. Now I kindly request our professor, Dr. V. Rajalakshmi, to honor our speaker, Dr. Simi Jain. Please, ma'am.
Photo.
Thank you, ma'am.